entrepreneurs have this massive opportunity to create wealth. And like we open a gym because we want to help people live longer. But the reality is we could do that as a coach. The reason that we're entrepreneurial and the owner of the gym is so that we can create wealth long term.
There's just like a huge element of luck for some of this stuff. Like sometimes you just open at the right space at the right time, get the right community, and that isn't recreated. So definitely one way that my thinking has evolved and changed, at 36-year-old John versus 26-year-old John.
You have to have some financial skills. Most of us who open a gym had none. We just loved coaching fitness. And it's like, if you don't know how to read a profit and loss statement, you will always be terrified of money. And if you're terrified of money, you're never going to make money.
Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. I'm John Franklin here today, as always, with Mateo Lopez and fan favorite, friend of the pod, my dad, Chris Cooper. Hello, Chris Cooper. How are you today?
Hey, guys. Awesome. Thank you.
You're definitely going to confuse some people online.
Oh, always catch Chris off guard when I say that. It'd say the same thing every time he comes on, just never. He's always a little caught off guard by that one. But
there are definitely people trying to figure out the connection between Kilo and Two Brain. And I think the theory that Chris is secretly your dad is going to do well in the comment section.
Every time I go on someone else's podcast, it's definitely like there's a line of questioning about the relationship between Chris Cooper, Kilo, and Two Brain, and I always just answer, yeah, he's my dad. So, yes, well, I am the fail son of Two Brain, but that is not what we are here to talk about today. We are here to talk about
that word.
Yes, you did. And we're here to talk about getting rich. We're here to talk about making money, which is what we talk about every week. But this is a very special week because Chris Cooper has a new book out. Hold it up, tell us what it is, and explain why people should buy it.
Well, the new book is Millionaire Gym Owner, and it was written for people who are making an income and are now thinking about their future and making investments and making their gym sustainable and creating wealth for themselves and their family.
Can you hold that up? That's a nice. I like that cover. Let the people see it. And this is actually going to be airing on Friday. So guys, if you were listening to this, you need to stop what you were doing. You need to go on Amazon because you can get it for $0 on Kindle, but it's today only. We are going to shut it down today only. You can also get Gym Owner Handbook, which is Chris Cooper's best-selling book on how to run a profitable gym. And if you are a entrepreneur gym owner, you can get the Start a Gym book, which shows you everything Chris knows about starting a profitable gym. So get them all for $0 and then come back and subscribe, and leave a comment. But Chris, give us why did you feel compelled to write this book? This is book number, all those books back there you can see in Chris's shelves. He wrote, this is number 8 for you, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So why does this need to exist?
It's because our clients are reaching that level right now where they're consistently getting to like 100K income a year. And now they're saying, what's next? How can I keep this going? How can I keep up my momentum? Where do I invest my money? Or often with gyms, you guys know this, it's like I'm earning 100K a year take home, but I'm also still working my butt off. And how do I get away from that? And so we needed a book about wealth, which is the freedom of finances and time. And our clients were hitting that point. And I know there are a lot of other gym owners who are at that point too.
Chris, how are gym owners doing right now?
Well, it's very polarized, right? Like there's people who are way out front right now. They've figured it out. They've got good systems. Their business is running really smoothly. They're changing a lot of lives. They're making good careers. And these are the people for whom Millionaire Gym Owner is written. The other end of the spectrum, you have people who are where I was in 2008. They're grinding and they're broke and they feel like they're in quicksand and they're slowly going down. But more and more, you don't see people in the middle anymore. And I think that's due to two things. One is mentorship, helping people grow forward. And second, unfortunately, is that a lot of people have just left the industry.
And do you need to read the other books in your series in order to understand this one?
You don't have to, but I think, if you're not to a point where you're making a decent income yet, you're probably better off to start off with Gym Owner's Handbook, this one, and then read Millionaire Gym Owner after that. And if you're just dreaming about starting a gym, don't let what I just said scare you. There's never been a better time to start a gym. and there's never been a better opportunity to build on the mistakes that other people like the three of us have made. Go get the book, start a gym, read it, get it for free today. And if you decide like, whoa, this sounds too hard or too scary, great. Like, we just saved your life. If you say, I'm even more amped up to do it, like, now's the time. You can still start a gym for under $10,000 and start changing people's lives by Saturday.
It is good that you mentioned it is a series. So you start with Start a Gym. Gym Owner's Handbook is the roadmap to get you from 0 to 100,000 in net owner benefit. And then Millionaire Gym Owner is from 100,000 to $1 million plus in net worth. Mm-hmm. But I do think this book serves a very important purpose and is a underserved part of the market. Granted, what percentage, let's start with what percentage of gym owners do you think actually make it past that $100,000 net owner benefit mark? Like, how many people get there?
It's growing, but I mean, in our data, it's about 12.5% get there. So it's a small percentage, but it is getting a lot better. I mean, if you asked me 3 years ago, that number would have been around 3%, so it's getting better and better all the time now that there is a roadmap to do it.
And I don't have data to back this, but my general gut feeling is when people get that 100K net owner benefit mark, that level of success, that's where they make the most expensive and stupidest mistakes in their career. Like, this is starting the gym was bad mistake number one. And then after 100K net owner benefit, that's when people can either like slingshot their wealth, or they can go right back to having to read Gym Owner's Handbook again because they make a couple poor choices. So how do you evaluate what is the best path to getting to $1 million from 100K? Like how do I think about that if I'm a gym owner who's just getting to that mark?
What is the Millionaire Roadmap?
Oh, here we go. Yeah. I mean, the first step is you need to think like an investor. So up to this point, everything that your schooling has taught you, your parents have taught you probably, and like your career has taught you is that the harder I grind, the longer I work, the more money I make. What you actually have to start doing is thinking about, how do I invest my time to get the greatest financial reward? And how can I invest money so that the money is creating money for me? And when you reach that point, that's what wealth is. It's your money creates the freedom of time and other money for you. So once you start with that mindset of like, how do I invest? The next step is you have to decide like what interests you. We have a program called Tinker where people are in the program sometimes for a full year before they even make their first investment, because they want to learn about Airbnbs, and they want to learn about buying their building, and they want to learn about overfunded whole life, and they want to learn about bonds and crypto and everything else, and then figure out what they don't like so that they can invest what they have into what they do like. It doesn't mean they're coming into the program with like 100K to blow. Sometimes their first investment's like $1,000, but knowing where to put their money is a really big deal.
And so what are some of the most common paths, right? It seems like if I've spent some time in that group, it seems like a lot of people will go second, third, fourth location. Some people will not operate and do commercial real estate. A lot of people do Airbnb. Like, is there like a correct path, or is it just like you got to be around some people who are doing some stuff and figure out based off of your conversations there?
Yeah, ultimately you want to decide. And so you want to really have like two big classes of investments. The first is like your high risk investments, which is your business, but it might also be like the stock market or something. The other end, and this is called the barbell strategy because we want you to be weighted at both ends. The other end is like the very conservative investments that you make and you hold forever. So that could be more like real estate. That could be more like a bond, something like that. The real key that we've found, though, is that the gym owners who get there fastest, they don't dabble in 50 different things. Like, they don't have a second location and a coffee shop and a tanning studio and an Airbnb and crypto, etc. Right? Like, you want to be heavily weighted at both ends. And so like the first year spent learning where you want to invest is key. Yeah, thanks. There's the graphic. The most common places that people do invest, though, are like four places. The first is that they're scaling their current fitness empire. So they're adding locations. They've got a good system. They're just going to replicate that. Makes a ton of sense. As I said, by the time you get to this point, you're in the top 12% of gym owners in the world. Stick with that. You're not in the top 12% of coffee shops in the world. The second place that they invest is they'll put it in more passive places. So I've got money in bonds. I've got a little bit of money in index funds, really conservative places that you don't mess with. The third place that people invest that a lot of people don't think about is in themselves. And so they might get a mentor. They might get like a psychotherapist, right? They might get a coach for something, or they might learn public speaking or whatever. They might upgrade their skills. We often say like fix the owner, fix the business. And that's really like a third place that people can invest. And then the fourth place is just in their lifestyle. Like we all feel guilty. Oh, I shouldn't buy that $10,000 bicycle. But the reality is, like, as fitness entrepreneurs, those lifestyle investments do actually compound and pay off in everything else later too. And of course, that lifestyle investment includes your health, because the last thing we want to do is create these 65-year-old millionaire misers who are so immobile they can't get up out of their lazy boy.
You mentioned the barbell strategy, and in the book there are three. What are the three? Maybe you covered some of them just now, but what are the three strategies you talk about in the book?
So really strategy 3 is two things. It's the two that I just mentioned, which is investing in your lifestyle and investing in yourself as an entrepreneur. So there's really 4. I have a long history of being really bad at tables of contents. So, like the first book had no table of contents, didn't have one, but that's okay because it didn't have page numbers. Didn't matter, right? So yeah, there you go. There's really 4 strategies. It's reinvest in your fitness business, invest externally in other people's businesses or stocks, invest in yourself as a leader, or invest in your lifestyle.
So let's talk about reinvesting in your fitness business, because I think this is one where a lot of people make mistakes. So you were once a multi-location gym owner, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
And we were also multi-location gym owners who downscaled. We went from 5 to 0. You went from 2 to 1, and they're still holding on. Power to you. I posted something on Instagram this week that got a decent amount of plays. Was this idea that I couldn't think of a single CrossFit brand who'd managed to scale past 3 facilities and operate it for a long period of time profitably, right? So I think being around that Tinker group and being around and speaking to a lot of other successful gym owners, as soon as they get their first location in a good spot, their head immediately goes to reinvesting means I got to open 100 gyms, just keep opening more and more. Because if I make 100,000 with one gym, with 5 gyms, I'll make 500,000. And that, in my experience, talking to people who've been around the block a while, that rarely, if ever, turns out to be true. So is reinvesting, does that, if you were in your situation and you were just running Catalyst right now, you got it to the point where you're doing 100,000 net owner benefit, you've stepped out of coaching every class, how would you, Chris Cooper, knowing what you know now, think about reinvesting into your gym? Because I think we need some clarity there.
Yeah. So what I did was open a second gym for exactly that, right? I think my net owner benefit was probably between 130 and 170 somewhere at that time. And I was like, great, let's just do this again. We had a great opportunity to do it, we thought. And so we opened up the second gym, and it was like, wait a minute. I went from having a general manager basically run my gym for me and making this fairly passive income to now I'm coaching classes all the time again and just grinding, and I'm not making more money. So what people miss there is, yes, opening the second location will drive more revenue, but it won't necessarily drive more profit. And so what I would do now is I would say, okay, Chris, let's say that you crush the second location for the first year and you can build that micro gym up to 30 grand a month and your profit margins are great, 30, 35%. Okay. So that means you're going to net about another 9 grand a month at the end of the year. The first few months you're going to lose, but whatever. Let's say that opening the second location is going to make me another $20,000 next year take home. The next question I'd ask myself is, how can I make that same $20,000 in the gym space that I'm in? What would it take to make that without adding all the other expenses, the 5-year lease, all the other staff, all the other stress, all the other equipment loans? What could I do that would make me the same amount of money? And that's actually a much simpler question if you get down to it. And I think that's why a lot of the Tinkers, they find themselves in this position where they own 3 gyms and they're like, wait a minute, I could condense everything back to one gym, have a happy life that I love again, and actually make more than I'm making from 3.
And for those that don't know, the actual book itself, it's case studies from people within Two Brain who reach that $1 million net worth. And this is something that the team audits. So it's not just like them talking about it. Like we actually, there's a verification process. And one person from the book that I interviewed recently that comes to mind is like Nick Habich. I think he went from 1 to 3 or 4, then back down to 1. And then he needed to do that dance in order to finally, start seeing his net worth go up again. I think what some people underappreciate it is like, if you're at that, or you are 150 in net owner benefit, like just doing what you're doing, you can get to $1 million really fast with just getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a very underappreciated strategy amongst a lot of high level entrepreneurs, is just like not shooting yourself in the foot, which is something, Matteo can attest we've done over and over and over again throughout our business career.
We all do it. And, so I just had this conversation with one of our mentors in Europe, and they were like, we need to have a specific high level group in Europe because we keep getting these people to a really great income that nobody else in their country is making. And then great, they're Two Brain alumni. We love you. High five. And 6 months later, they're like, I blew it. I tried to open this coffee shop. I'm broke again. My gym went downhill while I was worrying about which beans to grind. I need to come back and fix it. And so, another reason that we wanted this book was to keep people moving on that trajectory. Like 100K net owner benefit is our goal for most gyms because most gyms aren't there, but that's not the ultimate goal for anybody. Like when you finally hit that mark, you realize, oh, nobody else is thinking about my retirement. Nobody else is thinking about having money to pay for my kids' college or anything like that. Like I have to create that for myself now. And that's what this book is really all about. So, yeah.
I'm skipping ahead only because we're on this topic. And there's a particular quote towards the end of the book that maybe you'll know what I'm alluding to. So what do you see as the difference between people who are in the ramp up program at Two Brain versus the people in the Tinker and the people who you've used as case studies in this book?
Well, what they're learning is different. Definitely, like ramp up program in a lot of ways is triage, like let's fix the problems. And then it's let's create like a growth engine for your gym while you're building careers and stuff. And then once they're in the Tinker phase, they've proven that their gym can pay somebody, them. They're building careers for their staff and they're thinking about the future. But the real difference, if you took the people who are in each program, quite often the difference is their mindset, and entrepreneurial skills. So for example, and this is something that I had to learn and it held me back so much, scarcity mindset. When I opened up my gym, I tried to like repress CrossFit in my town. I wanted to be the only one, and so when the new affiliate opened up, I would like complain to HQ. This was like 2008. Now, every time a new gym opens up, like I am the first guy through that door with coffee. Welcome. We're so excited to have you. Please join our local meeting for lunch every month. It's like the third Wednesday, and because now I understand it's not just me overcoming fear. It's that it truly does benefit us to have multiple gyms within like a city block, and there's other skills too. Like you have to have some financial skills. Most of us who open a gym had none. We just loved coaching fitness. And it's like, if you don't know how to read a profit and loss statement, you will always be terrified of money. And if you're terrified of money, you're never going to make money, And so like, that's the kind of thing, like the big thing I would say is the ability to just get down to it and get to work. Like if we look at the people who get from their gym is breaking even or maybe even worse, and now they're making 100K and now they're a millionaire in 2.5 years, the biggest thing that they have in common is they get on a call with their mentor. Their mentor says, do these 3 things. They say, aye, got it, and done. And I think probably that's the passage that you're alluding to at the end of the book is like the fastest ascenders. They don't try to overthink. They don't try to second guess. They don't say, oh, that won't work for me. They just get it done. And we found that to be really true for us.
Who from the book made it the fastest?
Well, they all start at different periods, right? So it's not like, okay, we had a stopwatch on them, but there are some really remarkable cases in there, like Taryn DeBril. Her gym was, if not losing money than it was like going downhill. She was getting burned out. 2.5 years later, she's a millionaire with a house in Arizona that she rents out, right? Very impressive. Um, there's some other ones in there too, where people made like Sean Ryder's a good example, figured out how to leverage funds during COVID and, basically like leverage that into buying some assets and some other things like overfunded whole life. And, people who just quickly got a financial education and said, whoa, I can build wealth really quickly here. Now, the people who get there the fastest, I've got their examples in the book, but like their path is not for everybody. Their path might actually be a little bit riskier, right? Like I don't like borrowing money to buy buildings anymore. I just wait till I have the money and then I buy the building. But other people who are in like rapid wealth accumulation phase, that might appeal to them more, So that's why we wanted like a very diverse sample. There's 14 millionaires in the book. We've actually produced very close to 50 now, and I could have put them all in.
What was the criteria? How did you pick the success stories besides obviously them all, being millionaires?
Yeah, well, what I wanted was like a very diverse array of paths. So a lot of people in Tinker, for example, like they buy their building, right? And that's step one. And now they're paying the bank the mortgage instead of paying the landlord the rent. Great. Like that's what I did. But that's not the path for everybody. Like if you live in New York or you live in Vegas right now, like that's not going to happen for you. You need to find another path. So I wanted to have like a bunch of diverse paths in there. So our interviewer reached out to about 25, and the people who were like, yeah, I'll tell you names and dates and dollar amounts. I'll tell you all of it. They were invited to participate in the book. And those were like 14 people. And then I also wanted to really highlight the people who are doing good with money. Like these are not Scrooge McDucks, right? These are gym owners who are crazy generous, and they knew that they faced a little bit of like social risk just by being in the book. Like their members are going to read this and say, oh, that guy's a millionaire. But they still did it anyway to help other gym owners. So like, Trace Kennedy, I love his story and I saved it for last because having a very successful gym meant that he could devote all his time, focus, and attention to growing his church, and like, that's amazing. That's what we're doing this for. That's why I want these gym owners to be successful.
Yeah. We realized with Gym World, when you have a podcast or show or piece of media where it's basically talking about how much money a specific person makes, they don't want to share it on their social feeds because then all their clients and customers will see that. So it's one of those things where people are happy to talk about it, but they may not want to promote that because of the blowback. You brought up something interesting, which is this idea of leverage, right? And so the gym community, there tends to be a higher skew of like ex-military and the go-to finance guru in military circles is Dave Ramsey, which of course is like no debt ever, never use debt, pay cash for everything. And it seems like you have a large group of people in that camp, and then another group in the as much debt as humanly possible. So like a Sean Ryder type person is someone who's like, the bank's going to give me 4 million. I want 6, And so like, what's kind of how do you feel about leverage? How do you counsel gym owners who are saying, hey, I want to leverage up, or like maybe someone on the opposite side who doesn't want to take leverage at all? Like how should one be thinking about that?
Well, I mean, Sean's got a part in the book, and so any reader can see like what his strategy is. And there's a difference, right? For different people, there's a spectrum of leverage and risk that you're going to be comfortable with. I was brought up in a more traditional household where like you never ever borrow money, you never take on debt. So it was weird for me to buy my first building after I read Robert Kiyosaki's book and saved up for about 2 years to get a down payment. I was taking risk, but I also knew I would hammer that risk relentlessly until it was paid off. And that was 10 years ago, right? Like I was in a wealth accumulation phase, so I was willing to deal with higher risk. Now I'm in a wealth preservation phase where I'm not buying new businesses. I'm not opening coffee shops. I'm not making like riskier investments. I'm just not doing that stuff. So, you might fall toward a very conservative end of the spectrum. You might fall toward a higher risk, high leverage end of the spectrum. And where you are on that spectrum will probably change over time, but you can do it no matter where you are, no matter how you were raised, no matter where you live, no matter what you believe, no matter how old you are, you can still do it. You guys are way more willing to accept risk in the name of leverage than I am, for example. Right. So
I'd say that's true for one of us, not both of us.
I mean, John, you should probably give an example here
of getting leveraged up.
Yeah. Like what is an example where you have accepted higher leverage that comes with higher risk?
We took a $1.6 million EIDL loan at the bottom of COVID because interest rates were low. And so Mateo and I are on the hook for that. And we used that as a lot of the development money to build Kilo. And if Kilo didn't work, Teo and I still owe that $1.6 million. And we're on the hook for that. But if it does work, it can have many multiples of that. I own a few houses, same thing, but it's, my primary residence, which is, a tiny percentage. Like my mortgage is a small percentage of the money I make. So I felt comfortable with that risk. And then I reinvested all that money into stuff that I thought would be higher yielding. So individual stocks or index funds. And so, I did most of my borrowing during the COVID era when everything was like 2 or 3%. And I knew historically stocks return 8 to 10%. And so I know I could pocket the spread. So rather than, paying down debt as aggressively as possible, my sentiment is, hey, I can literally just put it in the stock market. And if I wait long enough, it's going to make money. And the way rates worked out, we can literally put it in T-bills and pocket the spread. Right. So we borrowed at 3 and, you can get T-bills at 5 right now. And we could literally just sit on 2% of whatever the difference is. So, but for, if you don't have that was a weird one-off example, one that we hear of all the time on this show is taking advantage of an SBA loan to buy your building, which I think is the number one reinvestment strat. Like if I owned a gym right now that was doing 100,000 net under benefit, I didn't own my building, that would be the first reinvestment I would make, right? Because there's story after story after story. The two, I think, most successful within Two Brain are Jared Beachko, who he came on and I think him and his partner Peter made like $2 or $3 million off of a building, and they put, I think it's like $30,000 is what it cost them out of pocket to buy it. So pretty good return there. And then a second one was not SBA; it was a Canadian gym owner, Andrea Savard, and I think hers was like $4 million. And she put a little bit more down and had to like flip a couple buildings to get there, but. I think it was like she put down $500,000, got $4 million 9 months later. And so that's the great part about leverage. But it cuts both ways. So if it's going bad, you can blow your money up pretty fast.
Yeah. And like, those are the home run plays, right? I am more of like a singles hitter. So, for me, buying the gym meant, okay, I was paying my landlord $3,200, $3,300 a month plus triple net. I could pay the bank $3,200 a month, and after 10 years, I would own this building, and then I could rent it out to somebody else, and they would pay me $3,200 a month forever. And I got that from Kiyosaki, and it made a lot of sense to me. And then what happened was just I was very aggressive with the mortgage payments. I knew what we needed to live on and put everything else into the mortgage, and in under 7 years, it was paid off. And now I just gave myself a $3,600 a year raise, right? Whatever that is, a $36,000 a year raise is like, $3,000 times 12 months. And that's how the asset works. Plus I can keep renting out that building for the next 50 years. So it's not something that I'm going to flip, but the whole point is that instead of time working against you because you have debt, time is actually on your side because the money coming from your wealth exceeds the debt payments that are going out.
So one way I like to think about leverage, or one of the reasons why if I went back to operating gyms, I wouldn't try and open, 15 gyms like some of the people we interview on here, is just the risk associated, like the downside risk. So I'm a lot more, I've had like huge windfalls and big L's. So like massive swings in wealth for me personally, just based off of having a large appetite for risk. And one of the ways I've evolved and this is primarily because I've had children. And so, I've always thought of taking big swings as like, hey, I lose it all. I get kicked in the teeth. Like I still have me. I still have my skills. I know how to make it back tomorrow. If you put me anywhere, I start with zero. Like I am the insurance policy. And I always felt confident in myself, being able to get out of the hole. But it changes a lot, and that perspective changes a lot when you have kids. And so, one of the things that I look at is like, all right, if you're opening up a gym, for example, it's like best case scenario. If it's a second, third location, you're looking at like 80 to 120 in take home after it's all said and done. But in order to get that 80 to 120 a year, like the risk you have to put out on the table is typically like signing a $400,000 lease and doing $200,000 of build out, right? So it's like $600, it can be as bad as $600,000 in downside to potentially make $80,000 a year in upside. And we know gyms trade at like a 2 to 3 times earnings, like that asset at maturity is going to be worth something like 160 to 240. So if you look at the skew, it's like I could create this $250,000 asset, but I have to risk $500,000-$600,000. And so that skew isn't great. Whereas like if I'm looking at like buying a building, I have to risk $250,000, but my upside skew is I can have this asset that's worth $5, $6, $7 million. And it's something we've heard over and over and over on this show, where we haven't sat down with a lot of people who said, hey, I've sold my gym chain for $10 million. And so it's just calculating, hey, what's my downside? What's my upside? What's my risk? Right. Here, right? Because if you lay down the gym, you're out 100%, right? Like it's a total loss. Where with your building, like the Andrea Savard, who we spoke about, who made the $4 million in 9 months, she actually never moved her gym into that space. She actually leased the space to a weed grower and then sold it based off of that multiple. So there's like a lot of optionalities, and there's a lot of ways you can win. Where if you're renting a gym space, a second location space, if you're expanding, there's just a lot of ways you can lose. And when you have like a stabilized gym, like Catalyst was the example you're given, where you're doing, 150,000 a year, like it's hard to screw that up, especially if it's the only thing you got going on for you, and you're in there and you got a good team in place. It's a stabilized asset. And so the way I would think about it is like, how do I take that money and put it into things that have a much higher opportunity of like, there's only ways I can win, right? Because like you said, only 12% of people get to that 100K net owner benefit, right? And I think if we talk to 100 gym owners who own multi-location, like how many people did it for 2 times or 3 times over again, that number becomes even smaller, right? So of the 12%, a lot of them, like you opened a second location and didn't keep it open. We had locations that we put under the same entrepreneurs, same skill set, most of the time the same market. There's just like a huge element of luck for some of this stuff. Like sometimes you just open at the right space at the right time, get the right community, and that isn't recreated. So definitely one way that my thinking has evolved and changed, at 36-year-old John versus 26-year-old John.
Well, I think there's maybe one more upside there, aside from changing people's lives. And that's why we chose the gym business. But like the upside to opening a business is that we get the opportunity to build wealth, and nobody else gets that. The only way that like my parents would have been able to build wealth is getting promotion, saving more money, getting another promotion, putting more away into like retirement savings plans. And then the equity in their home, or win the lottery, right? Like that was it. Entrepreneurs have this massive opportunity to create wealth. And like we open a gym because we want to help people live longer. But the reality is we could do that as a coach. The reason that we're entrepreneurial and the owner of the gym is so that we can create wealth long-term. And I think like people tend to lose sight of that, or they use the excuse that I don't want to make any money because they're not making any money. And so they wear like the martyr's mask instead of actually accepting what they need to do to capitalize on the opportunity and reverse the risk that they've taken.
Speaking of evolved thinking and ways in which perspectives have changed over time, so we were talking earlier about reinvesting in the business and different strategies. I know when we went through the two brain curriculum back in the day, there was it seemed to me a larger emphasis on like diversifying and creating multiple income streams in the business, nutrition challenges, boot camps, whatever. And now it seems like, especially as we interviewed more gym owners on this show, it's really people who are like kind of narrowing their focus. It's like, I just sell really expensive, semi-private personal training, and that's all I do. And that's how I can make $1 bajillion. So should people be focusing on the one thing, or, did the gym owners who found success in your book find success because they had, a robust nutrition program also, and the kids thing and whatever?
Yeah, man. So there's two stages, right? So stage one is what I would call ideation. And that's where you're trying to find product market fit. So should you try a nutrition program? Yeah, probably. Like, if you're a CrossFit gym and you're just selling group classes, you're going to need another revenue stream. It's going to be like one-on-one training so that you don't scare people off when they're thinking about your gym, right? Or maybe that's semi-private. And so you might spend a year, 2 years, 5 years in my case, like figuring that out, that product market fit, like what will actually serve my clients the best. Once you have that, you go all in on that and focus on that and cut out everything else. And so like when I went back in and, kind of like resuscitated my gym in the spring of this year, that's the first thing that I did, was cut down to like what's actually working here. And what we were left with was, we do some personal training, we do a growing amount of semi-private, and we do some groups, and that's it. Kids programs went out the window. Nutrition coaching went out the window. Online coaching options gone. We went from like 70 different options in our pricing binder down to like 6, and we only show the client 3. And like, that's the thing, is it might take you a while to get a good product market fit. This was misinterpreted by a lot of people who thought like, I need to have these 12 things. And that's my fault. So we would visit these gyms and there's like, well, here's our kids program, and here's where we're running the Ignite thing, and here's where we're doing the Masters thing, and there's the weightlifting club over there. And they were still stuck in step 1. They hadn't evolved into step 2. And that's my fault for not saying, hey, once you figured this out, stop doing all that other stuff.
Sweet. That was my question. Great.
Yeah. Like ideation, that first phase of business, ideation, trying to find product market fit, like it's necessary. But that's not where you build the big income. The next stage is income, where you've got product market fit and you're just all in on that. That's where you grow income really, really quickly. And then once you've really got that dialed, that's how you can like build wealth, by duplicating your model or taking the overflow and investing it in something else.
How are you thinking about retirement?
That's a damn good question. I've been through this a lot with different mentors, with our CFO, with my psychotherapist over the last few years. And to me, like you reach this point in your life that I would refer to as the blue zone. So there's 3 factors. Number 1, you still have your health. Like you're still fit enough to enjoy what you have. Okay. Number 2 is that your income comes from your wealth, not your work. So the investments that you've made are paying you. You don't have to like punch a clock. And 3, you have this sense of purpose. I think that like if you're missing any one of those 3, retirement is not really going to be great for you. I had one grandfather who retired on a full pension, and he sat in his lazy boy watching The Price is Right until he died. And another grandfather who had no pension, no savings, and he worked in the fields until the day he died. Like both of these men would have said, like, I had a good life. But the reality is, like, if you really want to benefit from the hard work done by the last 100 generations to get us to this point, you want to create the wealth that gives you time and financial freedom early. And then you want to extend your health span as long as you can so that you're healthy enough to enjoy it, and then drop dead in the middle of the night in your sleep.
And so what do you say to someone like me who's like, I don't want to retire. I never want to retire. I like working. I want to keep doing this for a long time. Right. Because that's usually an excuse for no exit plan, right? Like
often it is, but I know that you have an exit plan because you guys are both really good at thinking long-term. Like, where does this get me in 10 years? Where does this put me in 20 years? You're both really good at that, and most people aren't. But the the reality is that most people are reluctant to let go of their work because they don't feel like they have another purpose in life. So, hey, if I stop like being the top analyst for IBM, somebody else is going to replace me. Nobody's going to remember me. And I can't just go volunteer to be an analyst for a hardware company, like, in my spare time. You have to have a purpose. And luckily, my wife is amazing at this. Like, she runs the local food bank. She contributes to a whole bunch of different kids' sports programs. Like, she has a very, very busy life, but she doesn't have to punch a clock. And so the key, I think, to a happy retirement is that, I mean, I know all of us, our parents, when they retired, they said, oh, we're busier now than we ever were, right? Because they have things to do. It's the people who retire and it's like, oh, what time is Price is Right on? They're the ones who are not going to have a happy retirement. They're going to constantly feel unfulfilled, stressed, and just on a slow degradation to death because they don't have that sense of purpose. So, for a lot of us, John, that's going to be mentoring other people. More and more I'm getting invited to speak to colleges, universities, youth groups, kids who are interested in entrepreneurship. And that's kind of like the retirement project for me.
How are you thinking about it, Teo? I know you're not someone who wants to just be 80 and working and have always had other things that you wanted to pursue outside of commerce. Like what's your headspace when you're thinking about exit planning, retirement?
Yeah, I just have a different definition of work. It's like how Chris said, you are going to you're going to fill your time with things that you're passionate about that require you to do work, but it's not, like the example of, I'm not going to run a food bank, but your wife running a food bank, that is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not not working.
It's just a vocation.
Yes. But it's still hours and work and time getting put into this thing that I'm assuming, passionate about. So, there's always, I feel like, most people, if they have the freedom of time to like pursue those things, they're going to find the things they love to and pursue those things. So that's kind of how I think about it.
We've talked about the idea of functional retirement on the show before, Chris. Can you explain how functional retirement differs from the actual idea of retirement?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically functional retirement is just, you don't have to go to work. You don't have to follow a timeline. You still get paid because you've got cash flow assets that are paying you. And I think that's probably what retirement will look like for most entrepreneurs. We can't just shut it off. In the cases where somebody has sold their company and they've cashed out, they've got enough money for the rest of their lives. If you check in on them 2 years later, they're just waiting for their non-compete to run out so that they can start over and open a new business because they've kind of lost that purpose. So I think functional retirement is like the ability to choose when you work, when you don't work, to hit pause for 2 months or for 2 years if you want to, and not really rely on working. So your income comes from wealth, not from work, but you're probably still busy mentally, maybe physically, working on something that you're passionate about.
So I think another kind of answer to that question, John, it kind of based off of everyone talking about grandparents and parents. Like my dad, for example, is an actor. And growing up, he took a lot of jobs and probably some he didn't like love, but he had to do those jobs to make money to put myself and my siblings in school. And now as he's gotten older, like he's still getting jobs and working, but he's spending a lot more time at the theater, which doesn't pay as much, but the theater is like stuff he's really passionate about. And I assume as he gets older, he's going to just do more and more of that and pursuing and taking those roles that he just like wants to do versus the ones that he has to do. So that's kind of how he's not going to not act anymore as he gets older, but he just doesn't have to, he can say no to more things and just do the ones he wants to.
So it's just being choosier, right? Because I always thought of it as like functional retirement is like you're in a position where the business pays for your life expenses, but you don't have this large nut that allows you to, like, if your gym blew up, you would have to go find a job. You'd have to go to Wendy's or start another gym or something like that. Where actual retirement is you got, 20 million in bonds, and the coupon of the bond is kicking off more than you ever need. So like it's not something that like you directly own. I don't know if that's the right word. It's not a business that you are like actively managing where that money comes from. So if you got like nice real estate assets. I know, Chris, you're buying storage units and convenience stores and just slowly acquiring
liquor stores,
all the stuff in Sault Ste. Marie. I'm assuming that's a lot more passive than, say, Catalyst, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you could argue that I reached functional retirement with Catalyst probably around 2017. I did not have to go there. In fact, I didn't go there for over a year and still got paid the same amount. To me, that's functional retirement. But you're right. If anything catastrophic had gone wrong, I would have had to step in. And hey, COVID, like that, that started a process where I eventually did have to step in and rectify some things, but now it's growing again. The self-storage, like there's a spectrum of this too, right? So I say that I only own boring businesses now. Catalyst is still my only. Catalyst and Two Brain are very active businesses. I work there all day. They wake me up at 4 a.m. I love them. I do not need more of those. I've also got boring businesses like self-storage, which I forget that I even own sometimes because it's so passive. I do have a manager. So if somebody wants to like move out or change their storage combination or whatever, like she handles that. But other than that, it's all like commercial real estate with long-term leases.
Yeah. So being like a shareholder in something like having enough assets where you're a shareholder instead of like an active manager, where like Two Brain, you're the CEO. Catalyst, you're technically the CEO.
And that's something that our friend Sharon Srivatsa, he drew this little diagram for me in the book. And I just loved it so much. Here's like the stages of entrepreneurship. I don't know. You guys can probably show that better, but you can see it's like something he drew on a napkin for me. And you have to think like an investor. And when you cross that line, that's when you start getting maybe a little bit smarter about these investments. Like I don't want to own and operate like a surfboard store, right? Or anything else that I'm passionate about, because I don't want to ruin that hobby for myself. I don't want to own a bike store. I love bikes, but my garage looks like a bike store, but I don't want to own that. Self-storage, yeah, sure. Easy.
So basically use your income from your main gig to fuel your hobbies. Don't turn your hobbies into an income producing thing because it's just going to ruin them for you.
Yeah, oh yeah. How many gym owners have opened a coffee shop and now they hate both things,
I hate fitness. Now I hate coffee. This is great. What can I destroy next? One of the examples from the book is somebody, Tommy, right? He used the money from his gym to start like a distillery or something. And the distillery ended up doing all right, didn't it?
Yeah, it's doing great. Wild Feather Distilling down in PA. Tommy makes whiskey. And so, Tommy's in a different spot on that investment spectrum than I am. He's a young guy. He's got some little kids. He's a very active investor, and he was a very successful gym owner, like very successful. And his perspective on wealth is, now I have the freedom to do this other thing that I'm passionate about. And so he actually just sold his last gym. He's all in on Wild Feather and it's doing great. Like, I have no problem with gym owners opening different kinds of businesses, but the reality is that either your gym must truly run itself, or you should probably sell the gym and go all in on that thing, because you can't truly be the CEO on multiple fields of play at once.
Speaking of stories from the book, I don't want you to, I know you can't pick a favorite, right? They're all your favorites, but was there a story? What was the story that surprised you the most?
Well, Jake Fields. So Jake, you guys know Jake. This guy is such a pleasure to be around. You will be laughing in 30 seconds. He's an amazing storyteller. He just seems so excited about life. So this guy started a CrossFit gym. I didn't know this before the book. He started a CrossFit gym because he'd been thrown out of 2 other CrossFit gyms. Okay. Like, I don't know why. You can read the book and find out, but he gets thrown out of these gyms. I know, right? Like, what does it take to get thrown out of a CrossFit gym? Anyway, he gets thrown out of 2. He's like, I guess I got to do this in my garage. And then his neighbors started coming over. It's the classic story that Greg Glassman loved to tell. Then my neighbors came over and we squatted together. And then we had 3 guys meeting up at 9 a.m. every day. And then we found another couple of guys in the garage and we went to their place on Saturday and they came to our place on Saturday. And then I had 15,000 gyms around the world, and like that's Jake. But he's a really fun guy. He has these crazy stories, but he's wicked smart. And so one thing that he did was he had CrossFit Devotion. It got to be very successful. but he recognized like the people that he was losing from that gym who weren't sticking with CrossFit long term, they weren't going and joining other gyms. And he's like, I got to do something here. So he opened up this experimental gym called Club Ignite, which is awesome. It looks a little bit like Orange Theory, but like, you know, they base it on heart rate, and it's like very low skill, but very fun workouts, super awesome. And it worked tremendously well. Like it took him over a year to really get the thing going, but now he has these two types of gyms. And so the story of that is like what we were talking about earlier with product market fit. The CrossFit gym, Jake's so passionate about that. He loves it. Club Ignite has amazing product market fit. And so it's growing faster than CrossFit Devotion is. He's focusing his entire energy there, and he's fielding questions from people who want to like buy that as a franchise. They want a Club Ignite in their town. They want to own that. So yeah, just super cool. What a great story.
We talked a lot about making money so far. We talked about time with the retirement piece. One of the things that is critical to building wealth is managing expenses. And so, you know, how much money you need to make is directly proportional with how much money you spend each month, right? And so I know from working with you, you're a pretty frugal guy. Like I think Two Brain was probably doing over 5 million in revenue, and like you still refuse to upgrade to like the paid Slack plan. And so like, you know, you're a little more spendy these days. But when you were in the accumulation phase, every penny was accounted for. And so do you think that is a critical element? How do you think about that? How do you advise gym owners in terms of like, you know, because you mentioned lifestyle earlier, right? But I would imagine Chris Cooper in 2014 wasn't riding around on the $15,000 bikes that Chris Cooper of 2023 is.
Well, I mean, I look at money as an investment, right? Like I know that I can't keep money. Money has to flow through me. And so my role is to shepherd it into the best places. So I have no problem making investments, right? I'm not skimpy about paying for mentorship, for example. I routinely spend $250,000 a year on mentorship. I have no problem if we lose $100,000 on the summit. That's fine, because like the investment in the summit it can be life-changing for some people. Like it's amazing and I love it. Upgrading to the paid Slack plan when we don't need to. No, I'm just going to not do that, because I just don't see what the return is going to be. So it's not that I have a problem with like expenses. It's not that Two Brain is losing money and I have to like watch every penny, and I'm not miserly about it. It's just more a fact of like, you know, what is this in service of? That's all. So when you're thinking about it like expenses, you should really be thinking about it as an investment. Like, what return am I getting on this investment? What return am I getting on this space that I'm renting for my gym? What return am I getting on mentorship? What return am I getting on this like podcasting equipment? And that's really how I look at spending money. To be honest, we've never upgraded our lifestyle. Like I have one bike that's like a $10,000 bicycle. I drive a 2017 GMC Sierra. And when we built the house that I'm sitting in, I had just opened the gym, and like we didn't have flooring. We didn't have drywall. Like we had vapor barrier and insulation we were living in for years and years, and we've never upgraded the house. And so we finally just extended the house a little bit because my kids are like huge teenagers now, you know, but we live pretty simply.
But it's easy. So I get it from a business standpoint. Like every expense needs to be looked at through the lens of what is the ROI. So if I put money towards the Slack plan, what am I getting in return? But how do you calculate it for lifestyle stuff? So like upgrading, like I pay $1,000 a month for my house mortgage because I bought it at like before everything went crazy. To move into a house that's probably the correct size for my family, the amount of stuff that I have to take care of at this point in time, that's probably going to be that's probably going to cost like $10,000 a month. So it's like 10x an outlay. But like, how do I go about thinking about the ROI of something like that? Or like, how are you evaluating whether, the ROI of $1,000 bike versus a $10,000 bike? Like, do you have a framework for that?
Well, I can give you bike specs, but the key at our level is, and it's maybe just because we're close to 50, and thinking about retirement, like what we're actually buying for ourselves is the freedom to not think about money anymore. And I think like a lot of people who are brought up in kind of a savings focused household want to be free of that. So, just last night, a good friend, you guys both know him. He's having a benefit for his daughter who beat cancer a few years ago. It's out in San Francisco, so I can't make it. Tickets are $1,000 to this black tie event. We just bought tickets. Like, we're not going to go, and we don't have to think about it. I don't have to have a conversation about it. Routinely, this year we bought 76 bikes for local kids just because we could. And like, I didn't have to think about that in advance. And that to me is wealth. And like, that's what we spend money on. We don't look for, I could buy a really cool truck if I wanted to, but we just don't.
If people were to take away one thing from this book, what would you want it to be?
I think that it's achievable. I mean, what can happen as any entrepreneur, but like as a gym owner, I think it's especially true, is you get down in this hole and you look and you're like, man, I didn't make a paycheck from this last week. A client complained about cash. The only people making money are the government, my landlord. What the hell am I doing here? And then you get deeper into the hole and you think like, actually, this is only just going to get worse. And that's when you quit. And when that was me, I could see a way to make the business profitable. I already had a mentor, but I still hit this kind of plateau where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm making an okay income. I get it, but I'm not putting anything away for the future. My kids are just going to get like bigger and more expensive. How do I stop working? And I looked around the industry. I looked around my town. I could not find a single model of a personal trainer or a fitness coach who was 60 years old, living the life that they wanted to live, like with enough disposable income that they weren't worried about money anymore. They were all either working or they were quitting and like, getting a job, driving a cab at age 60. And I said, okay, well, like there's no model for this to copy. We're going to have to create the model. And so I had to try 1,000 different things. I bought the building. I bought, index funds. I bought bonds. I bought crypto. I bought whatever. And as I went down that road, I realized like, not only is there a path to do it, but there's about 30 paths, at least, paths that I haven't uncovered. And that's why I wanted to have a book with 15 different authors so we could all talk about our own paths and our own stories, but still be clear enough that we would create paths that other people could copy and follow instead of being so vague that we're just like giving advice.
So what I'm hearing is there's no right answer. You have to try a bunch of stuff and
there's no single right answer. There's no single right answer, but there's infinite wrong answers. And the first wrong answer is don't worry about it. The second wrong answer is it'll sort itself out. The third wrong answer is like my gym will eventually just get so successful if I keep working so hard that I'm going to sell it for more than I need. Right. So like while we're constantly mapping new paths to wealth and retirement and freedom, and there might wind up being 1,000 of those paths, like the wrong path is to not think about it, to just kind of like keep your head down, keep grinding and hope for the best. Like nobody's coming to save you. This is not a Disney movie. There's not necessarily going to be a happy ending, but the good news is that there will be a happy ending if you create it. You just have to start thinking about it now.
We're all about happy endings here at Gym World.
All right. So Chris, where do people go to get the book and where do they go to follow you?
MillionaireGymOwner.com to get the book. That'll take them straight to Amazon. The audiobook actually just went live today too. It's always like a week or so behind the print book. You can get the Kindle for free still today, as well as Gym Owner's Handbook. If you go to gymownershandbook.com, it'll take you straight there too. And the Start a Gym book, if you go startagymbook.com, it'll take you straight to the Amazon page where you can get the Kindle for free. Of course, all of my stuff, we publish for free every single day. You can get it at reinvesting.com. Where I like to interact with people and give them the thing that they need right now instead of sifting through all this stuff is gymownersunited.com.
Who was the narrator for the audiobook and why didn't you pick me?
I'll pick you next time. It was me because one time I hired a voice actor. This guy was awesome. I love this guy in person, and he read Founder, Farmer, Tinker, Thief, the first edition. And like the only thing that makes my jokes worse is somebody else saying them.
Yeah.
So So that's what happened.
That won't happen with me.
You'll just
I
cut
can
them
get
out.
in there. I can get in your head. I can channel you. Don't worry.
So if I write a book, will you narrate it, Teo?
Certainly part of it. Yeah.
Right,
Certainly.
cool. The journey. All right. And if you want to meet these gym owners, these millionaire gym owners, if you want proof that they are real, they will be in Chicago, June 8th and 9th for the Two Brain Summit. So if you just go to twobrainsummit.com, you can get a ticket there, save $100 off the price until I believe April 1st. So go pick one of those up. You get to hang out with 1,000 other gym owners, and we'll be talking about this stuff. We'll be giving a talk on the path to 100K, and then from 100K to $1 million. So be there or be square. It is a good time every single year.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like, if you go there and you don't know anybody, you've never been there before, just remember that, like, you have so much in common with these millionaires. The only difference is that they're a few years ahead of you in your success. You can follow their path. You can do what they did. And they are the first people to tell you that. Like, you could sit down beside them and say, hey, I'm John. Hey, I'm Matteo. You were in Coop's book. What the hell? Like, what did you do? And they will tell you everything. They will probably pay for your dinner, and they'll draw it all out on a napkin for you. Like, that's just how they are. So
we'll see you there. That's it for this week's Gym World Worldwide. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a nice comment, because Chris is Canadian. He likes it when you say nice things.
Very
about
sensitive
it.
About that stuff.
Doesn't like conflict. And we'll see you next week, Gym World. Keep trying your strategies. Success is closer than you think.